Chapter 18 of She and Allan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. She and Allan by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 18. The Slaying of Rezu. At last we were on the plain, the bemused remnant of Rezu's armour still doubling before us like a mob of game pursued by wild dogs. Here we halted to reform our ranks. It seemed to me, although still she spoke no word, that some order reached me from the gleaming Ayesha that I should do this. The business took 20 minutes or so, and then, numbering about 2,500 strong, for the rest had fallen in the fight of the square, we advanced again. Now there came that dusk which often precedes the rising of the sun, and through it I could see that the battle was not yet over, since gathered in front of us was still a force about equal to our own. Ayesha pointed towards it with her wand, and we leapt forward to the attack. Here the men of Rezu stood awaiting us, for they seemed to overcome their terror with the approach of day. The battle was fierce, a very strange battle in that dim, uncertain light, which scarcely showed us friend from foe. Indeed, I am not sure that we should have won it, since Ayesha was no longer visible to give our Amahagger confidence, and as the courage of the Rezuites increased, so theirs seemed to lessen with the passing of the night. Fortunately, however, just as the issue hung doubtful, there was a shout to our left, and looking, I made out the tall shape of Goroko, the witch doctor, with the other Zulu, followed by his 250 men, and leaping on to the flank of the line of Rezu. That settled the business. The enemy crumpled up and melted, and just then the first lights of dawn appeared in the sky. I looked about me for Ayesha, but she had gone. Where to I knew not, though at the moment I feared that she must have been killed in the melee. Then I gave up looking and thinking, since now or never was the time for action. Signalling and shouting to those hatchet-faced Amahagger to advance, accompanied by Umslopogaas with Goroko who had joined us, and Hans, I sprang forward to give them an example, which, to be just to them, they took. "This is the mound on which Red Beard should be," cried Hans as we faced a little slope. I ran up it and through the gloom which precedes the actual dawn, saw a group of men gathered round something as people collect about a street accident. "Red Beard on the stone, they are killing him," screeched Hans again. It was so. At least several white-robed priests were bending over a prostrate figure with knives in their hands, while behind stood the huge fellow whom I took to be Rezu, staring towards the east as though he were waiting for the rim of the sun to appear before he gave some order. At that very moment it did appear, just a thin edge of bright light on the horizon, and he turned, shouting the order. Too late, for we were on them. Umslopogaas cut down one of the priests with his axe, and the men about me dealt with the others, while Hans, with a couple of sweeps of his long knife, severed the cords with which Robertson was tied. The poor man, who in the growing light I could see was raving mad, sprang up, calling out something in Scotch about the "deil." Seizing a great spear, which had fallen from the hand of one of the priests, he rushed furiously at the giant who had given the order, and with a yell drove it at his heart. I saw the spear snap, from which I concluded that this man, whom rightly I took to be Rezu, wore some kind of armour. Next instant the axe he held, a great weapon, flashed aloft and down went Robertson before its awful stroke, stone dead, for as we found out afterwards, he was cloven almost in two. At the sight of the death of my poor friend, rage took hold of me. In my hand was a double-barrelled rifle, an express loaded with hollow-pointed bullets. I covered the giant and let drive, first with one barrel and then with the other, and what is more, distinctly I heard both bullets strike upon him. Yet he did not fall. He rocked a little, that is all, then turned and marched off towards a hut that whereof Hans had told me, which stood about 50 yards away. "Leave him to me," shouted Umslopogaas. "Steel cuts where bullets cannot pierce." And with a bound like that of a buck, the great Zulu leapt away after him. I think that Rezu meant to enter the hut for some purpose of his own, but Umslopogaas was too hard upon his tracks. At any rate he ran past it and down the other slope of the little hill, on to the plain behind where the remnants of his army were trying to reform. There in front of them the giant turned and stood at bay. Umslopogaas halted also, waiting for us to come up, since, cunning old warrior as he was, he feared lest should he begin the fight before that happened, the horde of them would fall on him. 30 seconds later we arrived and found him standing still with bent body, small shield advanced and the great axe raised as though in the act of striking. A wondrous picture, outlined as it was against the swiftly rising sun. Some 10 paces away stood the giant leaning on the axe he bore, which was not unlike to that with which woodmen fell big trees. He was an evil man to see, and at this, my first full sight of him, I likened him in my mind to Goliath, whom David overthrew. Huge he was and hairy, with deep-set, piercing eyes and a great hooked nose. His face seemed thin and ancient also, when with a motion of the great head he tossed his long locks back from about it, but his limbs were those of a Hercules and his movements full of a youthful vigour. Moreover, his aspect as a whole was that of a devil rather than of a man. Indeed, the sight of it sickened me. "Let me shoot him," I cried to Umslopogaas, for I had reloaded the rifle as I ran. "Nay, Watcher by Night," answered the Zulu without moving his head. "Rifle has had its chance and failed. Now let us see what axe can do. If I cannot kill this man, I will be born hence feet first, who shall have made a long journey for nothing." Then the giant began to talk in a low, rumbling voice that reverberated from the slope of the little hill behind us. "Who are you?" he asked, speaking in the same tongue that the Amahagger used. "Who dare to come face to face with Rezu? Black Hound, do you not know that I cannot be slain, who have lived a year for every week of your life's days, and set my foot upon the necks of men by thousands? Have you not seen the spears shatter and the iron balls melt upon my breast like raindrops? And would you try to bring me down with that toy you carry? My arm is defeated, I know it, but what matters that when I can get me more? Because the sacrifice was not completed and the White Queen was not wed, therefore my army was defeated by the magic of Lulala, the White Witch, who dwells in the tombs, but I am not defeated, who cannot be slain until I show my back, and then only by a certain axe which long ago has rusted into dust." Now of this long speech Umslopogaas understood nothing, so I answered for him briefly enough, but to the point, for there flashed into my mind all Ayesha's tale about an axe. "A certain axe!" I cried. "Aye, a certain axe! Well, look at that which is held by the Black One, the captain who is named Slaughterer, the ancient axe whose title is Chieftainess, because if so she wills, she takes the lives of all. Look at it well, Rezu, giant and wizard, and say whether it is not that which your forefather lost, that which is destined to bring you to your doom." Thus I spoke very loudly that all might hear, slowly also, pausing between each word, because I wished to give time for the light to strengthen. seeing, as I did, that the ray